Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, my name is Maria Eugenia Romero. I'm in Dr. Risk's 2430 Data Structures and Algorithms course for the fall of 2020. I am here today with a video over a breakdown of Lab 1 and how I approached it. This lab essentially, not only is it the first lab, but it's just a nice introduction to file reading, working with a little bit of the data inputs, and then writing to a file, and then the highlight of this is a try and catch statement. Now, just to go through my process of when it comes to approaching any problem within this class is thinking, first of all, what did I just learn? Second, how does it apply and what data structures can I use or algorithms? And then two, what are my steps? So I have this notepad opened up on the side just so that we can write down sort of like the key notes and the key points that we want to hit. So it says we're going to create a C++ program. Let me zoom in just a little bit. To read and input from a text file and perform binary math operation on characters. The purpose of this lab is for you to get familiar with input-output file stream. 2 ASCII characters and the type of operation will be given. Your program will first check if the input file exists, then perform the necessary operations and write the result to a file. Okay, great. So on here, I'm just going to comment first step. Check if the file exists. Cool. And then second step is perform math operations. Third step, write to file. Great. So it says that the input file is a single text file that consists of 2 lines. The first line will be a single number, 1 or 2, and it associates it with addition and subtraction. Okay, cool. So what we can also do is just have a list of variables that we'll need. So a list of variables will be, I don't know, we can call this operation, and it's an integer. And that will tell us 1 or 2 addition or subtraction. Or you can have a Boolean where you can also associate, 0 is addition, 1 is subtraction, yes and no, true or false, etc. You can pretty much organize this in whichever way you want. The second line is going to consist of 2 ASCII characters separated by a space, and a list of ASCII characters and their respective integer value can be found here. Cool. So we know that we're also going to need a char, and that will be character 1, and then the second character 2. Let's rename this because you can't technically write it out like that. Or just at least not common practice to do so. So 2 and 1, 2. Whatever, these are just listing out how many variables we're going to need. And then I guess integer and then the total of the 2, whatever, So then the output file is a single text file containing the integer result of the operation. Okay, great. So it also says here that you need to check first if the file exists. It says that the input file may not exist, so we need to make sure that we address that. And then the result cannot be a negative integer. So in here, they basically hint, try, throw, and catch statements. And this is how we should print out if the file is not found or if our values are negative. And when I first started this class, I was a little bit confused about try and catch statements, but I was explained to it in a way that was very intuitive, and I hope it works the same way. So on Microsoft Whiteboard, I had kind of drawn out exactly how it works, right? So you have your 2 blocks. You try something, and then you always have to catch. Because in your try statement, it's sort of like an if-else, but in order for your try statement, in order for your catch to work, you need to throw something, right? So it's sort of like a game of baseball. You throw something, you catch it. So in a try statement, you're going to have an if statement inside, or something that will result in you throwing either an error or whatever it may be, right? So here I wrote out how I was going to organize my errors for if the file is not found. And in the input file stream, there is a method that is fail, and it's with open and close parentheses. And it just basically says if the input file stream fails to open, then throw. And then we're going to catch that number, the error number that I threw, and I'm going to output to the file stream error file not found. And then this return 0 basically just cuts off the program running. So whenever you're in your main function, return 0 is usually the default return value. So that's how I organized it here. And I think we can get started with programming. So let's open up our C line. And again, let's think about what is the first thing that we need to do. So here we look for that file name, and all of this from line 18 up to the arguments of line 9 is always provided to be able to use the argument manager. And if you don't know what the argument manager is, there's really great explanations on YouTube that Professor Risk has posted on her resources website, where you can see how to use an argument manager and how to basically work that in with your code. So let's try this. So we first said that we need to try to see if IFS fails to open. Okay, and if it does, we want to throw an expression. That will be caught by, and it's called an integer, and we'll just, name it something like here. So then we write to file, error, file not found. And I want to take just a second to emphasize how important, especially when you're submitting any work for any comp sci class, I've seen that they really make sure whether or not there's a space here, there's a capital there, make sure you're wary of that, of how you're writing your output files. Okay, great. So now again, we needed our variables. So we need, let's use a char character just to represent the operation. So then we can write out all the integers, or sorry, not the integers, all the variables on one line. So this is how you just initiate multiple variables of the same type in a single line, where instead of like char operation, semicolon, enter char value 1, semicolon, enter, like that's a lot. So this is just more efficient. And then we said we needed an integer to have the total. So now the first thing we need to do is IFS get operation. And what this will do is just receive the first character it finds, excluding white space. No, it doesn't account for white spaces. So if you ifs.get multiple times and there's a white space, that get will write it, will receive that white space, and then push it into the variable that you're storing it. So this is a really important distinction. And usually it's important to distinguish between the different inputs. So ifs.get, it doesn't consider white spaces as non-characters, so it'll see it as a character and it'll grab that. Whereas if you use ifs, two arrows pointing to the right, it will just grab the first thing that is a non-white space. And then the same goes for value 2. So doing this, you will skip out on the white space. And let's use the first test file. And I just want to have a side note here. On CLion, it's really, really convenient to have a run and debug configure CMake application, where your program arguments are the name of the input and the output files here. So you have input equals input1.txt, output equals output1.txt, and then I do that for each of the 3 input and output combinations that they give you, so each of the test cases, and I just run them like this. Okay, so now we want to say, okay, if the operation that I read into is a 1, then that means that the total is equal to value 1 plus value 2. And then I just convert it to a string, and that's going to be my total, because we need to convert it from a integer to a string so that we can write it out. So then I say, okay, well, what if the operation, if I could type, is equal to 2, then we're going to try the statement, because again, we're not allowed to have negative values. So let's calculate totaling here, just bear with me. And we're going to say if total is less than 0, so it's negative, then let's throw a statement. Again, this can be any number, but I just like being very organized. If I use 1 in one part, then I use 2 in another. So then we're going to throw an integer, and if it's not a negative, then it means that we can print out to string the total. And now here we will catch the error, and I'm not sure what that was, but open and close parentheses, and we'll say OFS error negative results. Okay, perfect. So parentheses closed, great, return 0. And let's give this a run. And just keep in mind, if you're using the CMake applications debugger here, when you click run, your output files are going to be printed in your CMake debug. So output1.txt, let's open input1. Input1 was 1, so that means we needed to add. A and B is, let's see in here with the ASCII table, pretty sure it's 65 and 66, but let me double check. Where is it? Okay, cool. So we're looking at the decimal here, so 65 and 66, I believe that's 131. And our output is 131. Great. So let me zoom in just so that you can see that a little bit better. So here we go. 1 and 1. So let's run number 2. Number 2 exists, and this is going to be subtraction. Perfect. So let's run number 2. Number 2 is ran, output 2, error is negative result, because 65 minus 66 is negative 1, so you can't have a negative result. And I'm putting in input 3, even though on our CMake build debug file, there's no input 3 that exists. So as soon as we run this, we still have an output file, exit code with 0. So that means that our code ran perfectly fine without any errors. So then output 3, it says file not found error. So great, it all worked straight to plan. And what's important to note is that if, again, you're using CLion and you're using these CMake applications just to quickly run your programs as you're working throughout the semester, you want to make sure that you store them in your CMake build debug folder. And that will just make it really convenient for you to double check and go back and forth between test cases rather than running it on the server continuously. All right, so thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope it was helpful. I wish you all the best in Dr. Risk's 2430 class. Have a great rest of your semester.